Welcome back to She Talks Money. Today, we're talking about something that I think applies whether you're buying your first house, building a business, or just simply trying to create a life you're proud of. Because success isn't built in one giant moment, it's built in hundreds of small decisions to keep showing up, to have difficult conversations, to take calculated risks, to bet on yourself. And today's guest knows exactly what that looks like. Amanda Miller is a realtor, business owner, team leader, and mentor who has built a reputation for helping clients protect one of their greatest financial assets, their home, while also building a business centered around relationships, strategy, and long-term trust. Alongside leading Valley Real Properties, she also is involved in home staging and mentoring agents, giving her unique perspective on both the business of real estate and the people behind it. But what really drew me to Amanda isn't just her success, it was the way she talks about leadership, growth, and showing up with confidence. So today we're talking about building a business from the ground up, taking risks when there's no guarantee they're going to work, leadership and mentoring, women negotiating with confidence, real estate as a wealth building tool, and the mindset it takes to keep growing through every season. Amanda, welcome to She Talks Money.
I am so thrilled to be here. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Of course. I'm so excited to have this conversation. But before, let's just start at the beginning. Before you became a successful realtor and business owner, who was Amanda? Like, what originally drew you into real estate?
Oh, goodness. I feel like that's a loaded question for a really long conversation. So we'll start with who was Amanda Miller as in a professional perspective. How's that?
Perfect.
So I spent almost 2 decades in executive retail. So I
Okay.
spent about 8 years with Gap Incorporated. And then after that, I spent a decade with Tilly's. And
Mhm.
a lot of those specific roles had to do with store management, providing liaison between executive team leaders and store teams. When I left Tilly's, I was the director of training and development. So I was a liaison again between what the field employees were experiencing and what the
Sure.
executive team was feeling, right? Fast forward, my boys were a little bit older, and for quite a few years, I had had conversations with people in my life, my brother, namely, he's in escrow.
Mhm.
And for years, he was like, you have to get into real estate. I don't understand why you work so hard and you're paying someone else's paycheck. Like, you would be the best entrepreneur ever. And for me, like, there was a big risk there, right? Like, I've got
Mhm.
kids. My wife and I married in 2008, but prior to that was a single mom and had kind of adopted some like fears, right? So
Mhm.
you become a little risk averse. W2 is safe. I've got my car, I've got my
Mhm.
laptop, I've got my work cell phone, I've got my 401k, I've got my health benefits. And it, I I believe I finally got to a space where I thought, you know what? My boys are old enough that if I fail, we're all going to land on our feet. Everybody's going to be
Yeah,
okay. And I finally took the leap and started taking steps into the real estate world. And that was in 2018.
I love it. So was there a defining moment then, once you got started, that you realized, okay, this is actually more than just a job. Like this is going to be my career.
Oh, immediately. So, what's interesting is, and we'll probably get into the weeds here, but within both roles, so but with Gap and with Tilly's
Mhm.
along the years, I had had opportunities to start as a traditional role, right? I was a sales associate, I was an assistant manager, I was a I was a store manager, and then through identifying opportunities to make myself visible and
Mhm.
really pitch what I was good at, create specific job descriptions in various roles, I was able to find niches that were really defined like by my skill set where I knew I could impact. And I did that both at Gap and then at Tilly. So I created roles and then worked within them that didn't previously exist. So fast
Mhm.
forward to your question. So within real estate, before I made the big leap, because it was such a risky feeling for me on the inside, I had
Mhm.
met my mentor and team member at that time for a few years as I entered into the real estate sector. And my wife calls it we work dated for a little while. So he
Yeah.
and I, right? So I observed this team. I sat in on meetings. I I really had to feel good with where I could impact and where I feel like I
Mhm.
could add value. So again, I'm 39 years old at this point, right? And I'm thinking,
Mhm.
"Well, I'm really good at my job. I'm so good at what I do. I know it inside out, and I'm stepping into a world where I know nothing." And
Mhm.
so being able to immerse a little bit and do that work dating process allowed for a little bit of a confidence build to say, wow, like I could help shape this business as a small business. I could build in branding. I could build in,
Mhm.
they have no business structure. They have no business plan. They're all just kind of showing up and doing things because that's what
Mhm.
realtors do. So realizing where I could add value, there really was a switch that flipped where I said, well, again, for a third time in my adult life, I'm going to write a job description and I'm going to pitch to this gentleman who's been in
Mhm.
the real estate world for 25 years a role that will get my foot in the door to run his business until I can get my feet underneath me and become an expert and have some time on task with real estate.
I absolutely love that because when I talk to a lot of women that are, maybe they're midlife or we're a little bit older, we want to pivot to do something else because we're just
Mhm.
not happy. There's fear, but there's additional fear, I think, because it does feel like you're starting all over. And it's hard
Yeah.
to give up. Like, I've been doing this 25 years. It's like it would be hard to give up 25 years of skill
Mhm.
set. But to your point, like instead of having the mindset of like I'm starting from ground zero, like wait a minute. Those 25 years aren't to waste. You
Yep.
took skills from really a completely different area but still we're able to apply them to this business and find great success with it. So I love that, and I hope people hear that message to kind of dissipate some of that fear. As like all is not lost on what you've been working on
Right.
for years. Like how can you use that though?
Yeah, I
Um,
feel like there's so much that we do in all of our careers that are so
mhm.
transferable and applicable to so many different fields. It's just kind of looking at it with a different lens, and instead of saying, okay, yes, I may be a novice in this side, I'm not on this side. So what do I
Mhm.
already know? What have I already proven to myself? Where am I already showing up that's going to allow me to immediately be successful and have a launching pad instead of saying, wow, I feel like I'm 16 years old again interviewing for my first
Yeah.
job. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so looking back, what do you think the biggest misconception people have about building a successful real estate business is?
I think there's a lot of misconception. First,
Mhm.
first off, the money. Like we're just going to go big there and rip off the
Yeah.
band-aid because we watch TV shows, right? We're watching Selling Manhattan and Selling Sunset and all of these great shows that I absolutely get sucked into every time a new season launches. But what you start to see is these big dollars, these giant commissions, and
Hmm.
I think there's this complete misconception that one, it's going to be easy, like easy money.
Yeah.
Two, that you can dabble in real estate and be successful or be a part-time agent. And again, no disrespect to somebody kind of trying to do a transition move, right? But
Hmm.
expectations need to be very, very tailored to that
Yes.
specific approach.
Yes.
And I so the money first and foremost, and then second, that it's going to be easy. You are building an entire business that is based
Hmm.
upon your own branding, and
Hmm.
you can join a brokerage and you can adopt their methods of marketing and branding and direct mail and CRMs and all of the tools and resources that are provided with those brokerages. And let me tell you, there are some great ones out there.
Hmm.
However, you are branding yourself. So I do believe that most realtors come into the business, again, one, with a false perception of money concept, two, thinking it's going to be easy, and three, they jump in too fast. And
Yeah.
what I mean by that, there's no foundational concept of who is my avatar client? Who am I branding to? Myself to?
Hmm.
Am I creating any sort of personal brand? What training do I have? Where's my niche? Anything about
Hmm.
preparing themselves for this endeavor.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of people start out. I talk to a lot of new agents too, and I think, again, we need to make money, and the original mindset I think is like I will work with anybody buying or selling a house, right? But I don't. I think the right approach is to your point, niche down and figure out
Mm-hmm.
like who is your ideal client, and actually, this is a business. Write out a business plan. Like, how are we attracting those people? Where are they so that I can show up there? Not just like cast the net like incredibly wide because it can actually, I think, be harder to get business that way, in my opinion.
Exactly. I also would encourage anybody getting into the real estate sector to remember that your audience is not other agents, that your audience
Mhm.
is the general consumers and the general public.
Yes.
Because I think depending on, and I'm sure plenty of different sectors are like this. I just am infiltrated with real estate because that's what I do,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you often feel like it's the parading, the pageantry, the showing off essentially of results that may or may not exist because
Mm-hmm.
perception is powerful, but you want
Yes.
the perception to come from the clients and consumer bases, not from other
Yes.
agents. So I
Yes.
think that's important to note as well.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
So, what kept you going during any seasons when things were harder than they looked from the outside?
Oh my. I mean I could go back and say traditional things like what's your big why, and it's like my kids, my
Mm-hmm.
wife, a big life. And honestly, if I'm being really really honest, and I think we all should as women in our 40s and those
Mm-hmm.
that aren't quite there yet,
Mm-hmm.
I I think that there are people out there that truly have, as women specifically, a feeling from their gut, their heart, their mind, something that sits with them that is a drive and a knowing that they are meant for bigger things.
Yes.
You're nodding because I know you know what I'm
Oh, it's
talking
in my
about.
car
Like
so
it,
deeply.
and you can't verbalize it and you can't put a name on it and it's like intangible but you can feel it in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, I know as a mom and a wife and a friend and a mentor and all of those things, I know what I'm supposed to say here, but I'm going to tell you what keeps me going is the fact that I know I'm meant for it. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that there is something out there, that there's like a magnet in my chest that pulls me forward to say, you will find a solution, you will step into new spaces, you are worthy of these things. And
Yes.
that's what I lean into.
I love that. I'm doing some coaching with someone right now, and just this morning we had a conversation about like letting go, like literally just letting go. Um, I have that drive, I have that feeling, and I feel like I work hard, but I've been chasing, 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 and I just need to it's here. It's already here, right? Like my success is already here. I don't have to find that thing. Like it's going
Yep.
to find me and I'm doing all the right things. And it was like this peaceful, like, oh, okay. Now I feel a lot more relaxed.
Exactly. I try to use the word allow, which I know is because it's like
Yes,
we fight,
receive.
we grasp, we're trying to
Yes,
chase and pull, and it's like just do the things you know to do. Trust that inner feeling
yes,
is right, and then just
yes,
like allow and open your eyes.
yes. I love that. All right. So you mentioned women. Let's talk about confidence for a second, because I think a lot of women struggle with confidence before they ever struggle with ability, right? Have you seen that in your journey?
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so I am 5'10". I like
Okay.
pretty clothes. I like to pull myself together. And when I
Mm-hmm.
walk into a room, I am going to be noticed. It's just going to happen. I
Mm-hmm.
also tend to have an opinion and have always been slightly articulate or able to converse and show up in a space that, again, attracts attention.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the outside looking in, anybody would assume that I'm walking around the most confident woman on the planet. And on the inside, I am typically having a little mini freak out, right? And
Yeah.
I, I, I firmly believe that especially high achieving women and high achieving that again have that crazy pull from the inside out, we for so long had this expectation of how we're supposed to show up and how we're supposed to be seen and how we think we need to be viewed, that immediately diminishes our confidence because then we're questioning, am I being seen right? Did I say that the right way? Did this audience view me the way I think I'm supposed to be viewed by them? Instead of simply saying, you know what, this is me, this is who I am, this is what's important to me. We either align or we don't, and that gets to be okay. And
Yes.
I will say, that feeling, it's happened, it's countless times, right? At every new
Yes.
job, every big room you enter, any tough conversation, any introduction to someone new. And I do think that a lot of the growth out of that has to do with a couple of things. So one, a little self-reflection
Mm-hmm.
and really reminding yourself that, wow, you showed up however you showed up and everything worked out just fine. And here we are,
Yes.
still alive, still breathing, still thriving.
Yes.
And then I also think it takes practice, just like anything
Mm-hmm.
else. I think it's time on task and saying, you know what, if I do something enough times, I'm going to get a little bit more comfortable. And you start
Mm-hmm.
layering in little bricks and little bricks and little bricks of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as a woman in my late 40s, I I definitely think that it's twofold, right? You start to look at yourself in a way where, you know, we kind of joke about it, we scrutinize a little bit, and it's like you and I were joking about having to put on our readers before we can do
Yeah.
anything every day. I mean, I can't even read the back of my beauty care without my readers on,
No.
or taking a screenshot of something and then blowing it up. And so there's a lot of things obviously that become frustrating, but I will say on the flip side, there's also a feeling of confidence that comes with saying, you know what, I at this point in my life, I know who I am. I know what I
Hmm.
stand for. And there's a lot of confidence and power in that.
Hmm. I think we've also spent so many years caring for and doing for other people that we finally just run out.
Yep.
I mean, I do a lot
Agreed.
for other people too, but I think we're just finally like, you know what? I'm putting myself at the top of the list.
Yep.
Here's Jennifer Butcher. Take me or leave me. And
Yep.
if I'm not for you, that's okay. We were just not meant to be together and move
Exactly.
on
That
because,
gets to be okay. That gets to be
yeah,
okay.
that's
And
how I
I
embrace my 40s anyway.
exactly. We talk a lot about, you know, how the circle gets smaller. I will say in the last few years, it's been really awesome to see from a social media perspective, whether it's on podcasts like this, whether it's on
Hmm.
TikTok, whether it's on Instagram, there is a loud sharing of voices of women
Yes.
sharing messages like this, right? Where it's like,
Hmm.
it's okay to not be liked. That doesn't mean
Yeah.
be rude. It doesn't mean be disrespectful. It means that
Hmm.
not everybody's going to like you, and you're not going to
Yeah.
like everybody. And that gets to be okay. That just
Yeah.
gets to be okay.
Yes, I love that. So, was there ever, did you ever have one belief that you had to let go of in order to grow?
Yeah. And that again, just that I needed to be validated by other people to be
Okay,
successful. You know,
sure.
I think that social norms are hard to
Hmm.
move through and break barriers surrounding, right? And when I say social, I mean within your family, within your workplace, within, you know, your local community, and then on a macro level, right?
Hmm.
So my wife and I got married in 2008, and
Hmm.
I had two young boys at the time. And I was very cautious around how to share that part of my life and
Hmm.
who I was with people. And looking back on it, again, the importance of immersing in safe spaces and collecting people around you. And I use the word
Hmm.
collecting, right? Because they're
Yes.
your treasures essentially, that will move with you regardless of what you share, is super powerful, right? And
Hmm.
I think that for a long time, I felt like if I, again, wasn't who everybody thought I needed to be or who I thought they thought I needed to be, I was
Yeah.
going to be failing, right?
Hmm.
And whether that's, you know, straight A's in school, whether that's the MVP on a volleyball team, whether that's, you know, the number one producer in a workspace, whether that's this token, you know, generalized view of mom and wife and
Hmm.
household leader, I had to remove that vocabulary, that vernacular in my mind in terms of what those definitions were. So ultimately, I would say you know, twofold to simplify my very long-winded answer. One, I really had to redefine what success itself looks like for me. And then two, I needed to really move through whose validation I was actually seeking, and that the only people in my life that I needed that from, and not necessarily validation, but support, love, and kindness and acceptance,
Hmm.
would be my wife and my kids and
I love
myself,
that.
obviously.
Yeah, I love that. And I just read something the other day about friendships, right? Like we go through different friendships over the course of our lives, and some people are long-term friends and some are here for seasons, but I think a big part of like why a lot of friendships fall apart is we expect that person to be the same person they've always been, right?
Yep.
When we're all changing. Like I'm different than I was last year, 5 years ago, 10, yeah, like I'm just a different person. And so I think like my solid core group circle is are those people that are embracing and supporting you as you're growing and growing alongside their own selves versus trying to hold on to someone that they used to be or someone that you used to be.
Absolutely. It's funny. I call it my Wednesday is my walk day. So I get up in the morning and
Hmm.
I do a walk, just get some fresh air, and I don't do like a heavy workout or anything. And it's funny that you brought that up, because I literally, my train of thought was thinking about evolution in general as women and
Hmm.
people, and how important it is to be willing to allow that with your people. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And say,
Yeah.
I see you in this space, and now I'm cheering you on as you move into this space, but I recognize it. And I think
Hmm.
that the longest standing friendships really do allow for that.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's talk about wealth for a minute. One of the things I love about your messaging is that you talk a lot about protecting people's equity. Why do you think so many people underestimate the role real estate plays in building long-term wealth?
I think, again, the expectation of a realtor is that I show up with my little name badge and my little briefcase, and that I'm here to sell you something. I'm here to
Hmm.
sell you a house, and I'm here to open a door for you and maybe guide you through a few things. And I do believe that that is the generalized perception. You know,
Hmm.
consumers today have access to everything. They have
Hmm.
access to data, they can pull comparable values, they can pull to-do lists or checklists to prepare their homes for markets or to buy a
Hmm.
purchase. And I I strongly believe in using the word advisor, mainly
Yes.
because I'm not a salesperson. It's not in me. It doesn't feel good to me. It is an icky word and an icky feeling for me because I truly believe in education and information being the
Hmm.
forefront of how I facilitate any transaction that
Hmm.
is developed from a relationship of trust, right?
Hmm.
And so in the equity protection component, there is never, ever, ever going to be a time when I'm going to have a conversation with someone and advise them to do something or provide any sort of advisory guidance that would diminish their equity or be
Hmm.
a lesser return, again, based upon my experience and my knowledge. Don't have a crystal
Hmm.
ball, obviously,
Of
right? Not
course.
their
Hmm.
financial planner, but at the end of the day, I know my market, I know the data. And from the seat I'm sitting in, shame on us if we're not willing to inform
Yeah.
and educate.
And it starts with a lot of questioning, right? Like I always and I feel like I sometimes am up against an uphill battle on this, but I insist on doing kind of a discovery call with every buyer. And it's not just, I think in the world of transactions and so many, especially on the mortgage side, it's so transactional now. Like how many loans can we call? What, like how much volume can we close?
Yep.
Send them to the online application and fill it out, and then we'll see what we can do. Well, I don't even know what I can do until I have a conversation with you to see if
Yeah.
this makes sense, where your goals at, what are you doing short term, long term, all of the things. And I'll hold on to that till I'm out of this business, that it's not just a transaction. And some people are very methodical. They've done this, they've bought real estate, it's so on and so forth. But I'm still going to ask you like what your short and long term goals are, and I think it's important to have those conversations with people because it's more than just we're helping you buy your biggest asset, but I'm putting you in your biggest debt. And so I think there's a bigger
Exactly,
conversation around that,
exactly.
you
And
know?
it's so crucial. And I just think that being able and willing to ask questions and really get to the bottom of what motivation is for things. There are so many times when I'm going to say to somebody, are you sure you want to sell this asset? And
Yeah.
and I'm questioned. It's like, well, why do you not want to sell my house? I mean, no, I'd love to, but from where I'm sitting, this is what I'm looking at. So help me to understand what we're trying to accomplish here, because I want
Yeah.
to make sure that I'm guiding you properly and making sure that you're protected. Same as a buyer. If you tell me, hey, I really would like to buy this particular home in this particular area, okay, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Based upon the appreciation in this area year over year, I'm curious. It's important to me to know how long you intend on staying in this house. Oh, well,
Yeah.
we'll only be in the area for 2 to 5 years. Okay, well, let's talk about what that may look like for you then. So,
Yeah.
all of those things, in my opinion, are so incredibly important because money is, we all work so hard to
Mm-hmm.
build, to save, to invest, and to take all of those steps. And someone
Mm-hmm.
purchasing an asset as large as real estate should not be taken lightly. They should not be sold
Mm-hmm.
on any concept. And without the full education and picture on what their options are, I
Mm-hmm.
just, what is the point of having professionals in the industry, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people underestimate how emotional it becomes. Not everybody is like that, but when I'm talking to people, I always get kind of their budget, their monthly budget expectation or the max that they want to be at. And we're talking numbers. And I tell them, because I'm the logic that's going to come back into this picture. When you start to look at better, bigger houses, and, I have to rein you back into where you wanted to be at from a budget standpoint, because it does get emotional and people get excited, and logic sometimes can go out the door. And You know, then there's
100%.
buy. We don't want anybody to have buyer's remorse, right? We don't want a month later to call back and be like, oh, I can't afford this
No,
house.
we say all the time, I don't want on your anniversary to say, why did you let me buy this house? Right?
Yes,
It's like my
exactly.
biggest
Exactly.
nightmare.
Exactly. So do you think that, or what do you think today's buyers need to stop believing?
I think they need to stop believing, one, that interest rates are ever going to come down, like, period.
Amen.
I just honestly,
Yes.
and two, that there is power in waiting. Because
Yeah.
there's just not. And I know that those are very basic answers, but I do strongly believe again that there's so much information that circles around, and no matter what, in in prime areas where people are buying and selling real estate, I'm sure there's little pockets of the United States that are still seeing a little slower appreciation, or in some spaces slight depreciation. But from my seat where I'm sitting,
Hmm.
we continue to see strong lifts in appreciation and property values, and there is no power in waiting beyond
Hmm.
saving, right? So if it's your goal to put a percentage down, but know that it's a sliding scale. So
Yeah.
I think that I will also say that we use the term buyers, so I'm even going to say potential buyers. I believe that often somebody who is a perpetual renter, like a life renter,
Hmm.
believes that it's easier, right? To
Yes.
to not have to deal with things, or there's a hassle in maintenance or taking care of things. And I think that they might be missing out on a feeling of pride, on a feeling
Hmm.
of creativity. And then back to the wealth conversation, I think ultimately understanding that even if your rent these days may be less than a
Hmm.
mortgage, we used to say, I mean, you're paying someone else's mortgage. Well, let's be clear, your mortgage is going to be more than your rent. Those two
Yes.
things are
Yeah.
not going to be equatable in today's market. However, there's value there.
Hmm. I love that. Okay, a couple other business questions before we get into my favorite personal growth. You negotiate every day. What is one lesson about negotiation that applies like far beyond real estate?
Listen far more than you speak.
Oh, yes.
Period.
Perfect.
I
Yeah.
I mean, as we transition into personal growth and that conversation, there definitely is a time in my life where I was going to impart my wisdom, my knowledge, my frustration, my vernacular, my vocabulary on the other person and ensure that I was heard. And I
Hmm.
have come to grow those skills to determine
Hmm.
that asking questions, identifying where we can all win, figuring out motivations and creative solutions to be a team is far more effective than trying to assert dominance into a conversation and say, look, I'm better, I'm more wise, I've done more, I'm stronger, whatever. Nobody cares. Nobody
Yeah.
cares.
Yeah.
So leaning in human to human and asking
Hmm.
questions has gotten me far further than ever proving that I was the better agent.
Yeah. And when you're asking the right questions, you can discover what somebody's fears are. You can
Mhm.
discover what their motivation is, and you can discover what their goals are. And once you
Yep.
know those three things, you know what I mean? It's really easy to guide the conversation at that
Yeah.
point. Um,
100%.
what is one piece of advice you'd give women who struggle to advocate for themselves?
I would say, and I know I touched on this earlier, there is a lot of power in self-reflection. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
mean self-digging, right? And not
Mm-hmm.
saying, could I have done this better, and over analyzing your behavior, but actual self-reflection,
Mm-hmm.
and it from a positive perspective, and saying, sit down with yourself. Where am I doing really well? How am I showing
Yeah.
up really well? One of my coaches said to me early on when we started working together, like, create your stack of evidence. So create your
Yes.
stack of evidence that shows you how you've
Mm-hmm.
already done well, how you're already showing up, who you are as a wonderful human being. And I would say being willing to do that, it instantly creates a feeling of pride and confidence that then carries you into whatever it is you're trying to do. So it's like a reflection
Yeah.
and a reminder that I am who I am, and I am darn good at A, B, C, all the way through Z.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I've actually done that in my mom role recently because I'm like, my daughter's 17. She's going to graduate high school next year. And I all of a sudden have been in this like, oh my gosh, I have
Yep.
a year left. Like, have I instilled all the values and morals and all of the things in my daughter that I wish that, all of a sudden I felt like the timer was tipped over. But making notes of like, okay, wait a minute, let's look at the good things that I've done and let's pick out some personality things and the things they've learned and the kind of people they are and, the things that we have done well. So we're not failing, we're not behind. There's some things we can do in the next year to work
Right.
on, but like,
We're not
let's
judging. We're not
let's not
judging.
let
Yeah.
go of the last 17 years like we haven't done anything. um, okay, so speaking along those lines about success changes us. How would you say success has changed you?
It's changed me probably hundreds of times.
Yeah,
And I will say for a long time, again, going back, we are busy people, right? You're
hmm,
busy, I'm busy, people in general are busy. We're moms, we're working, we're carpooling, we're balancing, we're trying to
yeah,
grow careers, we're doing all of these things. And over time, I I think that we don't realize that we are successful. I don't I We're just on
yeah,
autopilot, right? We're doing the things.
yeah.
And so I will actually say it took years before I had somebody that sat down and said, I want to write an article on you. And I'm like, okay. And I know this is again a very long answer to this question. So I apologize.
No,
But
you're
she's
good.
like, I want to write an article on you. I'm like, okay. So we're reflecting on these decades of life. And it wasn't until I did that that I actually was able to see in hindsight what I had accomplished and what I had done. And in the moment, success was defined by getting through the day. Success at one
Hmm,
point was defined by being able to pay all my bills and not be in the
hmm,
negative. Success at another point was buying my first house and then barely scraping by to make my mortgage payment. Then success
hmm,
was affording to put a pool in a house, right? So it's
hmm,
grown over time because we allow the definition. But until I sat down and looked back on decades of life, I hadn't even realized that that was defined by all of those moments and how
hmm.
grateful I was for the position I'm in, right?
Yeah.
I'll say the way that I would have defined it, obviously prior would have been getting through days, my kids going to bed on time, right? There were just basic functions of life. Then I'll say in a career perspective, I was very metric driven, and I think that
Hmm,
stems from just who I was as a kid.
hmm.
So the straight A's, the number ones, those things. So from a
Yeah.
career perspective, it was like I need the best stats, I need the best metrics, I need to be number one, I need the trophy. And
Hmm,
so that was really the only way I knew how to define that. And mind you, I earned it, I did it, I chased
hmm,
it. At what cost? There's a lot
hmm,
that we throw away in that acquisition. But today, I'll say I define success much more based upon a feeling than a metric.
hmm,
Success today feels like I have an impact on other human beings. It
hmm,
feels like safety. It feels like some freedom, and it
hmm.
feels empowering. And
Yes.
I know that those are all just whimsy words, but there is no metric for me right now that says, I will be successful when X dollars are in my bank account, or I will be
Yeah.
successful when I close X amount of transactions for the year. Of course, I have goals that we're aiming toward because then that ties back to behaviors, but those
Hmm.
don't get to be defining anymore. They're
Right.
simply metrics, not
Yes.
success measurables.
Yes. And the other thing, can I just point out that I'm hearing is that success is more present to you instead of future based. Like, I will
Correct.
be successful when I have this or when I do this. Nope. It's your day to day, right?
Yep.
And I think that is for me, I've gotten there, and for me that brings so much more joy to my life when I can be present than, we're always chasing something. Don't get me
Of
wrong. I have
course.
goals.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's just more the day-to-day presence has
I
been a big shift in my life.
agreed. Like, for example, if my goal this year was to close 75 transactions,
Hmm.
75, like one of my metric goals. If
Sure.
I don't close 75 transactions this year, I am not going to identify as not successful this year.
Yeah.
And I think
Correct.
that's the difference where
Yeah.
10 years ago, a decade younger me
Hmm.
probably would have said, I did not have a very successful year this year, when
Yeah.
that's simply not true.
Right. Yep, very true. Okay, so one more question and then we'll hit our last question. What is something that you're intentionally protecting in this season of life?
My personal power,
Mm,
my personal power. I my entire life leading up to the last couple of years has been honestly about chasing validation
mhm,
and identifying who I was based upon someone else's version. And in this season, I am protecting the fact that my power, my ability to live, love, and life in a verb sense is
mhm.
mine to create. And no one else, even the people closest to me, can change that for me. That's my power to own.
That's amazing. That's amazing and so inspirational. Okay, so last question. If every woman listening walked away with just one belief after today's conversation, what would you hope it would be?
That every single woman out there has stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of evidence that makes them incredible and wonderful. And if you do yourself a favor and simply look at that stack every once in a while, you will be reminded of how powerful and confident you should be.
Amazing. This was such a great conversation. Thank you for being on. And I'm blessed that we were put in contact together because I just love this group of powerful, amazing women that are kind of becoming my circle that I keep getting introduced to. So I appreciate you being on the show. For me, one of the biggest takeaways is that wealth isn't just built by accident, right? Whether you're building a business, buying your first home, leading a team, or just simply trying to become a more confident version of yourself, it all starts with just being willing to take that first step. And then the next one, and then the next one. Amanda, thank you for reminding us that confidence isn't something we're born with, it's something we build through action. And if today's conversation inspired you, be sure to connect with Amanda. We'll include her website and social media in the show notes so you can follow her work and learn more. And if you loved this episode, I have one favor to ask. Think of one woman in your life who's chasing a dream, building a business, or wondering if she's capable of more, and send this episode to her. Because one conversation can change someone's confidence. And confident women don't just build successful businesses, they build strong families, stronger communities, and they inspire the women around them to dream a little bigger. Thanks for listening to She Talks Money. I will see you next week, friends.